Talking today with the City of Quincy Substance Use Prevention Coordinator Laura Martin to get some information about the 12th annual Candlelight Vigil that will be held on Wednesday, August 31st at 7 p.m. at the Hancock Adams Common right in front of Quincy City Hall. Laura, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Joe?
Great. Thanks for spending some time to chat with us. It's been a little while since we had an update from you. So before we talk about the vigil, maybe we should just let folks know that the city actually has a substance use prevention coordinator and what that position entails.
Sure. Yes, I've been around for a bit. It's Substance Use Prevention Services, Substance Use Disorder Services and Prevention Coordinator. And that's important, I think, for people to know because it's not just about preventing substance use, which is, of course, part of it, but probably the biggest and most, the part that I spend the most time is helping people in active addiction, in recovery, or family members or loved ones who have someone in their family struggling. Access services, explain, whether it's treatment from an acute level to a detox program, to a residential, to a sober house, or perhaps it's outpatient, and then helping folks just kind of navigate the system because there's so many different options out there, and kind of connecting them with numbers and contacts at those programs. So that is probably the biggest part of what I do, and collaborating with all of our nonprofits because I'm not a clinician, so I do believe addiction is a disease, and that people should have proper diagnosis and proper suggestions from someone that does an individual assessment of them. But I work with a lot of our nonprofits that have clinicians and a lot of our partners throughout the city that are nonprofit and for-profit that have treatment facilities, but more importantly, the recovery center, Bay State Community Service, Manus Health, and we're so fortunate in this city that the mayor, has really opened his arms to all of these facilities being here because I always have somewhere where I can send someone where they can get information. And if they can't get the help they need, we can work as hard as we can and usually figure something out to get it for them somewhere else. I think it's really, really hard when you or a loved one is struggling and it feels like you only have a 1-800 number to call. So I try to be kind of present in the recovery community and in the community at large just so people know there is somewhere to go, and it's anonymous and it respects their individuality, their privacy, and their loved one's privacy. So I'm fortunate to have all these access to all these wonderful partners, and to work collaboratively with them on the treatment side, but also to work collaboratively with the folks, fire and the police, to really keep everybody aware of the trends that are going on right now, and just try to keep people as safe as possible. Because, if we could, decide or use our will to get someone better, we would. But unfortunately, with this disease, it kind of defies reason, and people are so physically and mentally addicted to substances that they can have a life-altering injury or an overdose, and that's just not enough. And we have to stick by and support those folks if and when they're ready. So for that, it's, making people really aware that, drugs out there, they're pressed. Fentanyl is rampant. Methamphetamine is rampant. It's a different type of substance. You never know what you're going to get. People that may only think they're safe because they only use pills or only do cocaine or other stimulants, they're passing away because the drug dealers are, they're wise, and they know that fentanyl is something that, that high that it gives you is something people will desire, so they're mixing it. So, yeah, that was a long explanation. I think I looked at my phone about 5 minutes of what's going on. But I think it's really important because, prevention is, very important. It's good, but it's also the thing everyone likes to hear. Okay, we're preventing it. And, if I had a magic wand that could prevent it, I sure would, but I'm pretty sure there isn't one, So we have to work with the messiness of the illness as it comes. And I'm fortunate in the city and with the mayor and all my partners that we collaborate and we're really flexible. So yeah, that's it. There's my job description if I have to write one.
Well, there are new people coming into the city all the time, so I thought it was important just to get the information out that there is someone there to help if they are struggling or if they know somebody who is,
And there's, my email is lmartin@quincyma.gov, but you can also, call City Hall and leave your number and I'll call back. You can shoot me an email. People can come into City Hall and ask, but, I think a lot of times one of the other main points I want to make is, it's a disease that carries stigma, whether it should or shouldn't. I believe it shouldn't. I don't believe it's a choice that you develop, your addiction. Choices come afterwards throughout the throes of it. But I think there is still stigma as much as we work hard to erase it. And people's privacy and anonymity are such central principles that I hold really, really dear. So, people can know that. They can come, they can get help, as long as someone isn't suicidal or homicidal. No one needs to know. So,
Laura, how has the pandemic impacted the whole issue of substance use?
Oh, gosh. And I hate to use such a simple term. It's a mess. You had people not seeking treatment, emergencies rooms closed, just homelessness, job loss. It's a disease of isolation. So a lot of people went back. A lot of people that were casually drinking, that were alcoholics, but had jobs, turned into daily, all-day drinkers. Alcohol sales were huge. The drug supply, you have to remember the police weren't allowed, where courts were closed and it to arrest people, and, pill presses. Joe, honestly, just a mess. And that's not unique to Quincy. We were in a pandemic, and everyone calls it the opiate epidemic. I don't like the numbers. I feel like it's a pandemic level, but people did their best, and we've never dealt with a pandemic before, but people with substance use disorder are, oftentimes in lower socioeconomic, lower situations, and they're struggling, and there was a real lack of care and connection for them. But more importantly, the drug supply, fentanyl and methamphetamine really, really creeped in, and those are two, fentanyl overdoses are skyrocketing. Someone that's active in their substance use may, multiple overdoses a day. Fortunately, Narcan is available, and people have it. But deaths, and like I said, the drug supply is so tainted. You just never know what you're getting. And fentanyl, I don't even know the number to use for how many times more potent it is than heroin. But you basically can't find heroin anymore. It's fentanyl. So yeah, people are going into respiratory distress, and you know, they're passing away. Yeah, so hopefully I share the truth because those are the facts, and I think it's important to say that while also recognizing that, you know, the people working in the field were boots on the ground, probably, you know, worked harder than ever, but experienced a lot of pain and trauma and loss, you know. So for me, I think it's super important, too, to recognize we need to take care of our caretakers. You know, that tragedy that folks saw for COVID, the workers doing street outreach and dealing with substance use and clients passing away left and right, friends with long-term sobriety relapsing. It takes a real toll on you mentally and emotionally. So
one of the issues that came to light, specifically with the issue of Mass and Cass in Boston, was the lack of affordable housing for these folks that led them down the path to substance use. Do you think that's one of the areas that needs to be addressed?
Well, sure, because I believe that everyone deserves, you know, housing, dignity, safe place, but lack of housing didn't lead people to Mass and Cass. The disease did, in my opinion. I don't, you know, the fact that we have someplace we call Mass and Cass is just kind of, I think, a pretty sad thing that we have, you know, a shortened thing to talk about, you know, where people are really, really sick and suffering. And I think that, you know, quite frankly, like, it's just a demonstration of how bad this epidemic is. And, you know, people obviously want to use together and be amongst themselves because it saves their lives. I don't know. I don't want to, you know, of course, housing, counseling, treatment, you know, all these things. But I do not believe it. Someone doesn't have housing, so they become a heroin addict or they're on the street. You know, it has to be a multifaceted long-term approach, but I think the affordability there, more importantly, the lack of affordability of housing, even two friends of mine in, you know, solid sobriety struggle with that. So that's definitely an issue overall, but I would never say any, you know, the thing is this disease defies reason. You know, parents lose their children. That's not enough. You know, injuries, medical, everything we face. Like not having housing is not going to be an impediment. What would that be? Oh God, that's a hard word I just tried to come out with. I'm not even sure if it was real, but it is not going to send someone to Mass and Cass. You don't just, you know, go there because of something. You end up there, and you end up in those situations that you never thought possible because this disease is so strong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So housing is definitely an issue. Affordable, you know, access to health care, access to mass health beds. You know, we have a lot of treatment facilities, but not all of them take, you know, the state safety net insurance, which most people in the throes of their addiction at some point. Like, not everyone has Blue Cross Blue Shield, PPO. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of different things that lead there, but it's a representation of the fact that we're, like I said, in a drug pandemic. And it just manifested that is a place that people are congregating. It's around, you know, treatment resources, and it is what it is. But much better that people are there together than in the woods by themselves, because then there is nobody that can save them if they overdose. So,
how important is it also to support? I mean, addiction affects everybody, not just the addict. To support their families, their colleagues, their friends who are impacted as well.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, it impacts everybody, and in like seriously, seriously deep ways. And we live in a society that I think we're doing a good job decreasing the stigma. And we have, my brother passed away. God, he's been gone 18 years of an overdose, and my family was open about it. And I'm not saying this to brag, but we were open about it because we were worried about stigma. And, he didn't look like what people, air quote, would say a heroin addict looks like. But this disease does not discriminate based on your IQ, your pocketbook, your skin color, your home. It's a disease. And to me, that really kind of shows us 18 years later, we still face that stigma. So it's more important than ever to support the families, but to also recognize, Joe, that like just because I'm open, that's an individual choice. Like I think it's really, really important for people to respect. I always start every conversation with a family member, a loved one, anybody, Jim the barber. If someone comes to me, I don't care what the relationship they have with the person experiencing substance use is. I say, my name's Laura, and then I very quickly, the next sentence is, I want you to know as long as what you tell me isn't, suicidal or homicidal. I'm not a clinician. However, anything you say stays between you and me. No one's ever, and that's not just about the individual, but I say no one's ever going to know that you and I had a conversation, because that's why people keep coming back. And I also let people know that I'm not doing them a favor. This is my job. There's a reason that I'm in this position, and there's not a check system. It's not 3 visits with Laura and okay, then my services are done. Like I keep in touch with families long into their loved one's substance use, unfortunately sometimes after they've passed, and I support them around that. And when they succeed, people let me know. But no, yes, family, loved ones, everyone, we need to provide support. I believe very much in this being a disease, and also to stay in my lane. I have experience as a family member. I have personal experience. I have professional experience, but I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a counselor. And grief and, trauma and all those things, I'm never going to try to take that role. What I can do is listen, and if I can offer some words of encouragement, if I can offer resources, I'll give everyone anything I have access to. Yeah. But I think it's also super important that this disease is a disease, and it not only deserves for the individual suffering, but for their family, professional support. And I think that's really, really important, that we kind of hammer that home. Just like any other illness, definitely impacts the entire family. And this illness, for better or worse, carries shame with it, so someone they're struggling in silence a lot with their loved ones, their friends, their own illness. And that's really important. I think that we treat it like a disease, and I hope I'm not trying to offend anyone by the comparison, but any other, because people do have a hard time with that. I consider it a disease just like any other disease. And people have a hard time hearing, when I say, like, okay, I'm not going to have, almost like a fair for resources for treatment centers, because, like, if someone's had any disease, I don't want to say one disease or not, people do get very upset, they would go to a specialist for pre-op, post-op, they'd go to a surgeon, they'd have all these people, right? The family would have support. If they passed, the family would have support, specialties. And that's the way this disease should be treated, in my belief, because I think a lot of people have wonderful intentions, but we forget, like, it's such a desperate situation. We want to do everything. And we forget that we're not equipped to do everything. I can't tell a loved one, oh, tough love, you're enabling. I'm not in their situation.
Mm-hmm.
I have to respect everyone's boundaries and just give them the best I can, for my knowledge and resources, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But I think kids, especially children, are so impacted by this. And on top of it, these kids have just gone through a pandemic that has upturned their entire existence, and kids that are in homes impacted by substance use and families where kids are homeschooled and they're at home and their parents, they have the reprieve of school and the structure. That's a huge population that in the collaborations that I work on, the community groups, we're really trying to look at is like, it's an excruciating process to have a parent in active addiction or to lose a parent to addiction and then talk about it because of the stigma. But these poor kids were trapped in that cycle. And that's huge, huge trauma. So I think we have to look at that. The pandemic is, the CDC said no more masks, but the impact of the pandemic and the trauma that happened, just because on the outside it might look like we're not living in the pandemic as much, all of that damage on the inside, we still need to focus on that. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I kind of hammer home anytime I talk to anyone and they're talking about kids. I'm like, as substance use for prevention, to prevent them from going down that path, if we think we can do that, we need to deal with what happened, So huge part of prevention is helping all of these kids, all of these families deal with what occurred, and then on top of it, getting them or their loved one treatment.
Two things I think, you talk about that are important. Number one, there is help available, there is treatment available. And number two, success is possible.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me
100%.
about... Yeah. I think
we don't have numbers. It's a daily reprieve for people in addiction, But, yeah, treatments everywhere. In Massachusetts, a ton of treatment facilities have opened. Most of the individuals I deal with, they're not going to those treatment facilities because they have, public insurance.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, the recovery network and community is strong. And so I have a lot of friends that work in the private sector that will help folks. But I don't talk about that because that's not a public service. And more importantly, you don't want to be making false promises to folks,
right.
The treatment that we have, the Gavin Foundation, and I guess I'm a little biased because I'm a board member, but also I've seen the success, and I'm really proud to be a part of that. We just opened a women's house, so there's now a women's residential program. And that's long-term treatment, which I believe, in my opinion, it gives you the greatest amount of success, mm-hmm. but not everyone can do it. And there's so many others. That's just one that I know because I'm, involved in it, because we have the detox in Quincy. Mm-hmm. It's kind of this wonderful thing that there is a continuum of care within one system. And just because you go to one of their facilities doesn't mean you're going to their aftercare. But, folks really, really have the best shot the more treatments they get. So going from a detox to a CSS to a TSS to a residential to supported sober living, and then, throughout all of that, the treatment is also the community that you develop throughout all those stages, mm-hmm. and then that establishes your program, your daily program. AA, NA, medically assisted treatment. There should be no judgment on anyone's path. And yeah, there's treatment out there, and there's, success 100%. But how do you measure success? Like, it's kind of funny, right? But like, the greatest joy comes for me working with someone, and it's not, I don't care about their paycheck, their job. It's, that sense of peace, and they're no longer in so much pain. Life still happens. Recovery doesn't happen and everything gets wonderful.
Yeah.
You recover and you're given the tools to deal with anything. But honestly, there's so much. It's such a humbling experience, but like a beautiful experience to see, like, a mother have a visit with their child and building up those relationships. And that's really what it's all about. There's the success, just seeing families put back together, but seeing, people that were once so broken and lost have self-respect and have dignity and, be contributing and giving back. That's the biggest part for me. I mean, anyone that's gone through this, I hate to say it, but the hell of addiction, it's the greatest gift in the world. And you're so grateful for your recovery that they give back in such an altruistic, philanthropic way with no expectations of anything. So yeah, there's success all around. I see it every day.
Can we talk a little bit about the vigil? This is City of Quincy 12th annual candlelight vigil in memory of all those lost to overdose and substance use disorder. Wednesday, August 31st, 7 p.m. at the Hancock Adams Common in front of Quincy City Hall. So what will be happening, Laura?
Oh, so the vigil, I keep the vigil. It's very simple. It's, an opportunity for people to remember those that have been lost. We do, it starts at 7. I usually start like a couple minutes later just to give folks some time. But yeah, so basically what it is it's a celebration of life for those that have passed. It's an opportunity for family members to come together and, be supported by others that have lost. And honestly, just to recognize the impact that this disease has had. It's not just for overdoses. Alcoholism is, alcohol is still a big killer. So I think anyone, that it's actually not called an overdose vigil. It's called the vigil in remembrance of those lost to substance use disorder. So whatever the substance is, and we come together, people can submit a photo. I think it's up until tomorrow. If I get it in a day late, I might be able to do something.
Okay.
Not saying that, but, and they submit it to lmartin@quincyma.gov, and then their loved one is in a video, and we have music. It's all about just creating a space for folks to remember and honor their loved ones. I don't do, there's no big speeches, anything like that. As far as I'm concerned, no one's really interested in what I have to say about what's out there for treatment, because their loved ones are already passed away.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to laugh at that, but that's very important. I keep it very simple and to the point. There's no speeches. We have music, and the main thing I'll say, so the goal of it is to create a safe space for people to grieve their loved ones and to be supported by the community. And that's, from the mayor all the way to anyone, to your neighbor. And yeah, that's really what it is. It's all about whatever that person needs it to be. We have candles and we play the video, and it's beautiful and it's moving, and it's really sad because it's really long. There's a lot of faces up there, and that's hard. But that's also like decreasing the stigma, but also like increasing awareness. This hasn't gone anywhere, and the numbers they're up because they're going to keep going up, until they stop. Until I don't know what it's going to take. If I had the answer, then I and hundreds of others would have given it. But this is what it's all about. Just creating a space for people to get whatever they need around the loss of their loved one. And to restore, for me, it restores some of the dignity that people feel their loved one lost because they died of this disease. And there should be no shame or anything like that. So, yeah, I wish I had, like, a program or whatnot, but it's just a night for people to come together and be supported in the city, and be supported amongst their peers. A lot of people from treatment facilities come that have lost so many friends. So it's whatever anyone needs it to be, and it's just a safe space.
Will there be resources about treatment and recovery available? Or?
I don't do treatment resources because, quite frankly, it's an overdose and substance use disorder vigil for people whose loved ones have passed. We did in the past, and other people do. For me, I think it's very difficult for a family member to see all that's out there that their loved one didn't have access to. Now, on the other hand, I'm 100% a realist. So if other folks do that, that's fine. There will be grief support resources because it is, people that have passed. And Nana Community Health will be there, and they always have Narcan available, for families who, for anyone that may or may not be struggling. But no, I mean, like I said, everyone looks at it differently. For me, that was a very difficult thing for my family and a lot of other families I know to see it, almost like us an uplifting. Well, there's hope. Of course there's hope. But I also don't have any speakers, sharing about their recovery. It's literally a vigil to honor those that are gone.
Yeah, it's a memorial service.
And I keep it, and there's no rhyme or reason beyond, I keep it extremely simple for that reason. I don't want to, some people may be offended that I don't have treatment resources. I know people are always asking. I don't want someone to walk through and see all the tables set up when they're going to hold a candle for their loved one.
Yeah, I understand.
But that being said, that email that's on the poster and me and the community, there's so many resources, and during Recovery Month, there'll be a lot of events throughout the local communities, the Recovery Center, where people can access that.
Okay. We should catch up with you. What is that month, Laura?
September.
Okay. So we should maybe catch up with you later in September.
Yeah, I
talk about that.
don't have any specific. We do the vigil on the 31st, and so many events are happening. So I don't have any specific events. It's really just a celebration.
Okay.
To recognize that we do recover, and we'll probably do a couple of different things.
Okay. And we should mention that the rain location is at the Quincy High School Auditorium.
Yes, but we're holding out. I always optimistic on that.
Yes, okay. Anything else we should let folks know about right now?
No, I mean, honestly, that's the best thing I can say is if they need help before then, that's a whole week away. So people should just know that I'm available and that we have a lot of resources within the city that I can guide you to or, and, I don't think there's anything else. We'll just get ready for that day. And it's pretty simple. It's pretty streamlined. Mark Carey is like my saving grace. The mayor just gives me the green light to do whatever's necessary to make it, a really nice night. We have it on the Hancock Adams Common, which is a very, very beautiful place to have the ceremony, because that's where it should be. And Mark helps me with all the video and sound. And it's just, so that's all. That's all I got.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about it, and hopefully you get some information out to the community.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Have a great day.
Thank you, Laura. You too.